married to retired Lieutenant Colonel Corrigan, who also served in the Army for 28 years. They have a 20-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son, and they live in Florida. So let's please welcome Colonel Corrigan.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you to the entire Republican women of Prescott. There's a sign in my sister's house that says it's pronounced Prescott. Hopefully I got that right. But and thank you, Sherry. It's truly an honor to be able to speak with you today about veterans. And I'm so proud of everyone, having the veterans stand. The Gold Star families, the ultimate sacrifice. Our service is our family's sacrifice. So can I have everyone who has a relative or had a relative at any point in the service, son, daughter, father, uncle, cousin, whoever, can you all please stand up as well?
It's me. Wow. Look at this. Whoa.
So on behalf of all the veterans, I'm saying thank you. General Ray Odierno, when he was Chief of Staff of the Army, used to say, and may he rest in peace, used to say, the strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And I would extend that to include our communities. And this turnout, that proves my point, emphasizes that point. And Sherry did a great job of explaining the origins of Veterans Day. Different from Memorial Day, that started with the Civil War and honored the fallen, those who fell in combat. But Veterans Day, different origins. Brother-in-law Bob and I were talking about World War I and all quiet on the Western Front this morning, and it made me think. Remembrance Day, to honor the Great War, the war to end all wars. Well, it wasn't. And as Sherry pointed out, in 1954, we recognized that. President Eisenhower signed into law Veterans Day to honor all veterans. One of my earliest memories, and Mom, I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of my earliest memories as a child that had anything to do with the military was going with Grandma and Grandpa to a Veterans Day ceremony. And I know it was Veterans Day and not Memorial Day because it was freezing cold on the prairie in South Dakota with the wind whistling. And Condi, South Dakota has about 200 people. But there they were, the men from American Legion Post 148 from Condi, South Dakota, in uniform. And I'm talking, this was like 1969 or 70. Not a popular time for the military in most of America, but in Condi, South Dakota, Burt Lenz was going to make sure I knew this is what you do. And there were veterans there with the flags, World War I uniforms, World War II uniforms, Korean War uniforms, and they were proud. And so I always kind of remember that. People ask when they hear, oh, you went to West Point, are you from a military family? Well, my father was drafted in 1951 to fight in the Korean War, 7th ID on the front lines, in what was another horrible war. Grandpa, my mom's father, was drafted for World War I. I still have that picture of him in his doughboy uniform. Mm-hmm. My great-great-grandfather immigrated to America from Bohemia in 1823. He was born in 1823, immigrated in 1854, became a legal citizen in 1860, naturalized. 1864, he was drafted by the state of Wisconsin to fight in the Civil War at age 41 with 2 kids already. He survived the Battle of Atlanta, and the war, of course, ended in 1865, but then moved to the Dakota Territories on the Homestead Act and dug a hole in the side of a riverbed, and the rest is history. So, am I from a military family? No, I'm from an American family. Everybody here probably has to start very, very simple. You know, for 246 years, young men and women have answered the call to arms, the call to duty. And since the 70s, it's been an all-volunteer force. Whom shall I send? Send me. People are volunteering. And I think that's really important. Only 23% of enlistment age Americans can meet the bare minimum requirements in terms of physical fitness, intellect, and a lack of a crime record, to include drugs, to join the Army. 23%. So when you see our armed forces, you are truly looking at the finest, the top 23%. Anytime while I was active duty that I had an opportunity to talk to service members, and I commanded, even though I was Army, I commanded all different services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I would tell them, thank you. Especially after 9/11, there are 2 kinds of people. Those who stayed in, who were in before 9/11 and stayed in knowing that they were in a fight, and those who joined the military voluntarily knowing that they were going into a fight. So I would thank them, because they could be doing something easier, they could be doing something more comfortable, they could be doing something a whole lot safer, and they could probably be doing something more lucrative. So, you know, they all raised their right hand and swore an oath. You know, I took my first oath, my first day at West Point was 2 July 1984, and raise your right hand. I, Sean Corrigan, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and it goes on. But literally for the last 246 years, young Americans have been taking that oath. And Veterans Day recognizes that. And you know, between Veterans Day and Memorial Day, they're very personal for me and very important to me. So in 30 years that I served, we had 6 different commanders-in-chief. Ronald Reagan was president when I started in the Army. Donald Trump was president when I retired in 2018. 6 commanders-in-chief, 1 constitution. And that's what we swore to support and defend. All of us for the last 246 years. We take that sacred oath before God and our comrades that we're there to fight together. So when I was talking to Judy about, well, what would you like me to talk about? She said, oh, just talk about 30 years, some highs, some lows, whatever. And if you can, you know, kind of relate it back to the folks here. So I'll start with highs, and it might not be exactly what you think. You might be expecting some kind of cool guy, Rambo war story kind of things. And well, first off, is there anybody here who served with me? Okay. Nothing ruins a good war story like an eyewitness. No, but I'll tell you, some of the highs, promoting and re-enlisting soldiers, reaffirming that commitment, taking that oath, staying in the fight. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So that was one of the highlights of my career, and it happened a lot of times. Watching subordinates learn and grow to be better than I ever was. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But that's truly gratifying. And finally, taking care of families when and where I could. I got a note on LinkedIn from the wife of a guy I commanded right before I retired. And LinkedIn's the only social media I'm on, because as far as I'm concerned, like TikTok is something a clock does, a clock that Bob built. And well, that, and, you know, throughout my counterterrorism career, we used a lot of social media to hunt down a lot of really bad people, so I know how vulnerable it is as well. But Dallas wrote me, and this is part of it. She said, in Tampa in 2016, when I was pregnant with our daughter, Pete was away. And that's because I sent him away. He was one of my subordinate commanders, and I'm in the Middle East doing intelligence work. You called me personally to make sure I knew Pete would be home in time for Augustine's birth. That's a highlight to me, you know, because I was able to do that. And like I said, our service is our family's sacrifice. And they shouldn't have to sacrifice when they don't have to. The one kind of tactical highlight I'd like to give you is, it's not killing or capturing terrorists. That's what we did. That's literally what I did for 18 years. It was saving an American. In early 2005, or actually it was late 2004, an American Navy veteran named Roy Hallams was captured by what was then Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's crew. And they had him in captivity for 9 months. In September of 2005, we had the opportunity, we developed enough intel to take a shot at rescuing him. All right, General McChrystal gave me 3 days, and then I had to get back to the primary mission of destroying terrorist networks. On the 3rd day, we had a pretty good idea where he was, but we're running out of time. So I made the call. We're going into the Sunni Triangle, which was a fight, a really bad fight. We lost a lot of people in there, but we had to go in the daytime to get him. And I looked around at my unit, my squadron. I said, this is what we're gonna do. Not a single one of them batted an eye. It's like, yep, that's what we do. That's our job. So we flew in, rescued him, and we destroyed a lot of terrorist networks, killed a lot of bad people, but that was a mission where we saved an American, and that was the highlight. Now there are tough times too. Jamie, I mean, I can't say it any better. Seeing friends, colleagues shattered. Mark, seeing families shattered. Went to a lot of funerals, a lot of memorial ceremonies. And that's why what I do now, serving the families of fallen special operations warriors, that's a very, very personal mission for me, working for that nonprofit, because I'm seeing kids. The last time I saw them was when we were putting a star on the wall, on a granite wall at our unit with their name, and they were little kids. Now, I work for a foundation that helps put them through college, literally starting with them, paying for school from preschool all the way through college. So there were a lot of shattered families along the way. Tactically, we didn't always get our guy. We won every fight, that's for sure, but we didn't always get our guy. And we didn't save every American that we tried to. And that brings it right back home here. I was no longer a tactical commander when Kayla Mueller was hostage. I was at the operational level, working for the command that oversees all those missions. So I was no longer the guy on the ground. The guy on the ground was one of those subordinates who I had trained and led, and who's actually way better than me. that brings that back around. But we tried and tried. 3 different missions to try to save Kayla. Always 24 to 48 hours too late. And it was very, very personal for the entire command. And then in 2019, when I had the opportunity to actually find the man who killed her, the man who had imprisoned her, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, that same unit that I used to command, that my subordinate was commanding, now he was the next level up commander. He was the one that was on those missions trying to rescue her. Now he was leading the whole thing. And he named that operation, Operation Kayla Mueller, to kill Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And he succeeded. So we never forget. So again, our service, all of us, everyone who stood up as a veteran, our service is our family's sacrifice. In my 30 years, I spent six Christmases in combat zones. And out of the 5, they'd have killed you just for being a Christian. 5 out of those 6 combat zones. Mom, I think the first one was Just Cause, when my first niece was born. Bridget's daughter was born while I was in Panama during Just Cause. I think my mom went to church every morning that I was there. Our service is our family sacrifice. So while I was busy trying to save Roy Helms, my wife was also active duty, and she got called out to try to save New Orleans from themselves during Katrina. I'm not sure who had the harder mission. But okay, here's the quandary. We've got a 2-year-old daughter. What do we do? My wife calls my mom, who lives in Chandler. 18 hours later, she's on the ground, taking care of our 2-year-old daughter, our 100-pound Rottweiler, and most difficultly, our 6-pound angry cat. So that's the kind of sacrifice. Some mark the ultimate sacrifice. I came home every time. I came home every time. Some didn't. And I work for their kids now. That's what I do. I was at a fundraising event on Saturday. Oddly enough, it was a Sammy Hagar rock concert in Washington, D.C. Yeah, rock. Can't drive 55. So it was that night. So Saturday after breakfast, I walked into a 7-Eleven, bought a pack of gum. I didn't even need the gum, I just needed the change. And I said, hey, can I get as many pennies as you can spare and $2 worth of dimes from the guy at the cash register. The guy at the other register started snickering, and I looked at him and I said, in the military, we got a tradition. You visit a cemetery, you leave a penny at the headstone to show that you visited that person. You leave a nickel if you went to basic training with them. You leave a dime if they were in your unit when they died, and you leave a quarter if you were there. Now I'm gonna need a whole lot of pennies, and a whole lot of dimes, and a couple of quarters. Are you okay with that? Yeah, you quit snickering. And so I spent all morning wandering around Area 60 in Arlington. The MC for that event was one of our graduates. The foundation has about 471 graduates. She's one of them. 189 in college right now. Fantastic girl. Brilliant girl. So she was emceeing. I went up to her before the show, told her, Sydney, I saw your dad this morning. I went and visited. Big hug. That made everything right. So, on Friday, Veterans Day, yes, please do think of vet, but thank their families, because our service is their sacrifice.